Hello, everyone. How's it going? Welcome to yet another edition of the Storyblok Community Chats. And this time we have a very interesting topic, which is developer program management. And I'm super excited to be hosting this particular live stream because, first of all, it's a community chat. And I personally love all the discussions that we have had in the past. And this is the fifth edition of it. And this time, more precisely, because the topic is of my interest, which is developer program management or developer programs in general. And I'm sure we are gonna learn a lot in this particular live stream. Talk about what this is all about, understand the developer mindset, where it's coming from, different challenges, what KPIs to consider, and different strings attached to this. Having said that, I would also like to welcome you all to this particular one. Feel free to say hi in the chat. I can already see a couple of folks there. So thank you so much for joining. Stay tuned. If you have any questions, feel free to bring those questions up and we can definitely grab that while we are in this live stream. But without a further ado, let me quickly welcome the speaker of this particular edition of Community Chats, and round of applause in the chat, some drum rolls. Maybe I can add some from my side. We have Juan Pablo from GitHub Education. Hello, hello.
Hey, how's it going?
Going well.
Glad to be here. I mean, it's been a long time this show, so we're excited of joining you today and seeing familiar faces here in chat joining right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I was personally excited for this one because as soon as when we were discussing internally what topics we can talk about, especially in the community chat, we run different shows on Twitch. One is the Girl Code Coffee Break that is run by our Girl Code ambassadors. The other one is Code and Chill with Storyblok, where we talk about our SDKs, our different tech partners we have. And the third one is Community Chats, where we just have various conversations on different topics. And I thought that this would be a great topic to talk about. And the only person I could think of while talking about this topic was you. So thank you so much for accepting the invite.
Oh, stop it. Thanks for thinking about me. I really appreciate it.
No, absolutely. Thank you so much for spending this time with us. And I know you're just back from your vacation, so you must be just catching up with things. But this can be personally a busy time for you, right? And you thought of taking out time from this particular phase. So thank you so much for that. But yeah, welcome again. Maybe let's start with your introduction. I know many of people in the chat already might know you, but also many people might join us in this live stream later and also watch the recording. So let us hear from you.
Sure. So my name is Juan Pablo Flores. I'm a senior program manager here at the GitHub Education Team. Student developer programs, that means from high school students to and graduate students as well. And I was born and raised in Mexico City, moved to the US. And one right now is manage a program that I hope that a lot of you have heard of, which is program. I know Siddharth has been part of it. Definitely, there's a few awesome people that we are very lucky to have as part of the program. Outside of that, as you mentioned, I've been back from vacation. I really wish everyone takes a couple of weeks every once in a while just to relax and re-energize. And so yeah, for job there introducing myself, but definitely you can always find me around the internet if you have any questions about GitHub Education as at Juan P. Flores. I try to be as online as possible. As you might imagine, there's a log there that I need to go through, but really excited to talk with anyone about student developers, or if there's anything that we can be of help. Happy to give a little bit more information about it.
Absolutely, and yes, you did a fantastic job for sure. Cool. Thanks for introducing yourself. I think for most of us, as a student, when I used to be a student, developer programs in general added a lot of value to my journey. And of course, GitHub Campus Experts being one of them. And I personally have gained a lot in this experience of just being part of these programs run by different organizations, different companies, uh, and essentially, I personally was always on the student side or the participant side of these
Mhm.
programs. Uh, Growing up as a student, as a community leader, and also professionally, I gained a lot of insights and kind of gained experience around working with interns, working as an intern, and now full time. And have been with these initiatives for quite some time. And uh, it was always good to be on the other side, to understand how the programs are catered, how developer program manager mindset occurs, and everything around the same. Of course, it has been a great learning journey, and I'm learning every day. And I think this topic is very crucial when it comes to all the other people who are already part of some of the other programs out there, the developer programs, for them to understand how does this adds impact, and also for every aspiring program manager out there, someone who is just getting started or someone who is already building programs. And I'm sure like we are gonna get some great insights today to cater those conversations maybe in future around the similar topics. So I'm quite looking forward to that. And having said that, let us start with very basic, which is the role itself. So if you can provide an overview of what developer program management entails.
Yeah. Well, I think like first of all, is very close to mine. Like I used to be part of like the and I think for a lot of folks that are part of these programs, being a program manager is kind of like a dream job. Like you see a lot of folks doing it, and for me, I know for me personally, it was kind of like I saw kind of like in the US else, and I was like, hopefully one day it'll be an opportunity for me to have some sort of job like that. And I think I'm in some sort of way I'm. Oh, I see that it is lagging. So is it okay, or is it lagging yet? Still
I think for me it's good now.
audio lag. Oh no, we're gonna get with the audio lag.
For me,
um,
it seems good. Not sure about the audience. If they're saying maybe, I think it should be better now. It was a bit in the start, but now it's better.
okay, cool. Um, so yeah, overall, I think that for for a lot of the work that I did at the time, I always tried to kind of like get myself a little bit more involved with the program, and I believe that I got to a point where um, I was very lucky enough to get like the opportunity to manage the program uh, after working with like the folks at the GitHub Education Team for a while, and ended up like here. So I think like defining what a program manager is quite a complex job. I would say my role at GitHub has gone through so many changes, not only on the responsibilities that I have, but also on what the company is looking from the program and from the work that we're doing. So the program manager, and I think like a lot of these management roles have a lot of flexibility, and a lot of companies will have a very different definition of what the goals of the organization is. Uh, Education has changed a lot inside of GitHub. So our own organization where we were kind of like, when you think of like organizations within each company, each one of them has a specific set of initiatives and goals that push. On the other side, as kind of like we have changed within like GitHub, now we have like an entire communities organization called Developer Outreach, and that is great because we get the opportunity of working with other departments or other organizations within GitHub. But also, it is important to acknowledge that those goals that the company has defined sometimes come from levels beyond that. And the last part, which was like now we are a communities team, which is uh, another layer of complexity that you need to. As a program manager, I think one that you might end up having is understanding like what are the measures of success and what are your responsibilities that make the most sense for the business. uh, I know it
Mm.
sounds a little bit weird to talk about like business in and sometimes it makes it feel a little bit less authentic, but I do believe there is a very good balance between business goals and community goals. And your job as a program manager is finding that very slight balance between what are these natural patterns and needs that people have on the specific audience that you're working with, and what are some core kind of like goals that the business might have, so that you can create a win-win situation between both. um, as a program manager, you'll have a lot of different things you'll have to do and many hats to wear. So, for example, sometimes it is for me travel to events and give talks. Sometimes it is fully managing kind of like the campus expert program, which is kind of like what I enjoy the most. And then there's other opportunity reporting other parts of the business to understand the audience better. So it depends a little bit more about like who um, it depends a little bit more about like the company itself, but I would say your goal is to become a subject matter expert on any
Mm.
specific product, so that you're able to create these initiatives and program any type of work that will help both like the company and that audience or product.
Yeah, definitely. And also, like, that allows me to bring to my another question here. Like, it's connected itself. When you mention that uh, programs like these, community oriented initiatives, uh, when, of course, in some or the other way, they does add a lot of impact in the business value of the company or the product in general, right? I wanted to understand, how does these programs, from the perspective of like company, adds value, and how
Mm.
impactful the role of a program manager is in these scenarios, because it's definitely impossible, not impossible, but difficult, very difficult to cater all the community members together, understand where they're coming from, what they are bringing to the table, and then completing that feedback loop within the company in different teams, and ultimately add it as a value for the business purpose. So how do you think, is programs important, and how do you think this role of a program manager cater that or bridge that difference?
Yeah, no, I think, I mean, program management, I think, is a core role.
Mm.
And especially, it depends a lot on like what's the state of your company. Well, it's not the same being a program manager in a company that is in a seed position, like it's just like getting started, than in a company that is kind of like in an enterprise level, like GitHub is right now. uh, I think there's like three different stages that every company has, and this is something that I learned from a book from a very close friend of ours, Vanessa Yanarelli. She just posted a new book called Surviving Changes at Work. And the three stages that normally you will see is like the seed part, which is like, probably as a program manager, you will have access to the co-founders and you will have access to like the company knows each other. And I would say at that stage, a lot of like the work that really helps out is, um, sharing the stories, the founders of like the importance of the audience and the importance of the programs that you're building. And that can like help out to grow your programs and show as well kind of like what's the impact of the of the program that you have. In role where it's like you already have like you already have like at least like 50 people in the company, it becomes a little bit harder to make relations with everyone, like
Mm.
layers on top of each other. So there's a little bit of like focusing on becoming a very much like an expert, and working with experts on how can you kind of like prove that market fit for the product that you're working for. And then you
Mm.
have things like GitHub, or like big companies like Microsoft or whatever big company you're thinking of, where their goals is like they already know they have like product market fit, and it's like how do we get market we can get the most market on this specific product as possible. So a lot of that is kind of like how do you scale these programs to a level where uh, if a company is thinking of international expansions or getting to new markets, you are part of that strategy so that you also have like a seat at the table when decisions are being made. So um, there's multiple ways in which like program managers can be part of it, and I think about it when I joined in the transition of GitHub finding like product market fit and becoming like this massive like thing that is right now. It was also kind of like a few months after the Microsoft acquisition.
Hmm.
So a lot of that is kind of like that transition period of changing from, hey, why do we have like an education team into like with us the value of having an education team.
Hmm.
And I think a lot of that changes because like it and a lot of people have a lot of struggle with it because from being a mission driven organization where you say like we want to support like all of the students and we want to do all of these to support our like top users to be able to build and do more, into like, well, that's cool, nice vibes, but why should I give you money?
Hmm.
And it that's why I think the first step that you as a program manager would need to understand is what is the current state of the company that you're working on, and what are the things that they are trying to optimize for.
Hmm.
That being said, there's another part that I think a lot of program managers overlook, which is understanding who your target audience is. And what I mean by that is that, and this happens a lot with like student communities, right? Like you start a community, you say, well, I want a community and I want to bring everyone from my school to join and everyone can be part of it. And we're going to be friends and we're going to build really cool projects and all of that. Uh, but defining an audience of like who, out of like these massive number of people that might be using your product or your tool, this specific program or this specific initiative that you're working on, who is kind of the ideal audience that will be part of it. And you can start building on that. We can talk more about it, like how we design kind of like these programs and initiatives afterwards, but definitely like understanding where the company is and who the target audience each of these programs and each of these initiatives, a couple of steps on how you can take your developer programs in the right direction.
Interesting. I think a couple of points there, and I personally feel that that's so true in many ways. Of course, understanding the needs of the company and where it's standing is so crucial because many a times it happens that we have it's like different goals, but they are not reliable on each other. Like it becomes an identity within itself, but whereas it has to be something like driven through the company's goals. Uh, Whereas many times it happens that, for example, if there's a developer program out there, it has no way link of anything with respect to what company's goal are. I think that's where it actually starts to understand where the company is standing, what are their end goals, uh, what do they need as an end result, uh,
Yeah.
and I think that can be a great way to start from there. And of course, the second part would be to bridge it, and to make the bridge we need to find the other point, which is developers. So understanding the target audience in this case. Yeah, I
One
think
thing on
it
there, and,
was.
and I want to mention that that happened a lot. And I completely did that as well, where you're like the rebel of the company and you're like, they don't understand the value of my program and they don't understand the audience and you want to do things on your own. And one of the biggest problems with having those type of attitudes and not working with the overall company is that you will end up isolating yourself.
Hmm.
And isolating your program from the overall business strategy is going to do more harm than benefit at the end. And it's going to be do harm not only for kind of like your audience that you're working on. And I see that a lot with like mission driven folks where they really want to continue with like that original mission. uh, so in some sort of way knowing how to play the game is a fundamental way to not only showing that you care for the company, but also that you care for the audience, and keeping kind of like this very light and very well established balance.
Yeah, makes sense. Totally. I think it's not worth it if it's not matching, because I uh, of course there will be a situation where they're putting in a lot of efforts, they have a lot of vision with respect to the programs they're building, but at the same time, if it's not aligning, if it's not adding value to the overall core business values, or just in the company's benefit, I think that is going to be a lot of silent thing for the community in general, and also in terms of the support or the resources which are actually needed and could improve the program in general.
Hmm.
Awesome, thank you so much for sharing that. I think that brings me to the next uh, part of the question that I had also about, let's say we have the program, it's aligning with the company goals, and we have understood the target audience. It's ultimately very important to engage the program in the right way, or engage the developers effectively in programs like these. So how do we do that? How do we attract the right kind of target audience? One thing is that we know who is our target audience, but how do we first identify them? Second, how do we attract them and welcome them, or just ask them that, hey, we are running this program, would you be interested to be part of it? That is like, because it's, let's say it's a new program and people are not aware of it, but as a program manager, you know how, what is the value you're bringing with the program. So how
Hmm.
do you identify the right people? How do you make it engaging? Or maybe you can just share some right practices with some
Yeah,
examples.
that's a very complex topic. To be honest, I think no one has uh, perfected it. There's a lot of evolution and iterations on it.
Hmm.
So depending on what stage your program is right now, it's kind of like the way that you can, let's call it, recruit new people into your program. And I would say what works really good for the first the first kind of like batch is making an invitation only type of program. So people that your company might have data on about how they're using your product, people who have been advocating for your product, or creating content, or being out there and kind of like sharing more stories about like how they're using specific product, can be a great way of doing that. When when you think about like the first batch of like campus experts, a bit of a combination of like who people who are building great communities on their schools. And then the batch was very small, it was like 10 or 15 people on the first batch, and everyone got an invitation from someone from either like vision to be part of it. So ideally at the beginning it's going to be a little bit hard, you're going to be more proactive on inviting people and engaging with them. This is kind of like a very important part of your program, because it's when you're going to be setting the values and the mission, and kind of like the way that you're going to be working with people in the program. So the first batch, I would say, is very important to make sure that you are both engaging with the community, establishing like the right values, and also something that you've heard a lot lately. It's like, how do they know they are doing a good job as part of like this program or this initiative that you're doing? So think about it in this way. Um, Once these people or these folks start being part of this program, and they, depending on kind of like how the cycle of your program works as well, because for example, the way that campus expert work is very different to the way that Storyblok ambassadors might like work, because like we have a start date and an end date. Like there's a point where folks will graduate, they will become professional developers. Fortunately, that's the point where the program reaches its. So for us, it's kind of like we know that we have a countdown, and we're trying to engage as much as we can in this very short amount of time that we have. And when you think about it, like 2 years, which is kind of like the average time I spends in the program, is a very short amount of time. So a lot of that is understanding how you're going to be kind of like working with them, and especially with programs like Campus Expert process into an application process. And what I mean by that is invitation process requires a lot of energy and a lot of work. It's great if no one knows about your program. So you invite a few folks, and you can do that like 1, 2, or 3 iterations, and then measure where you're currently standing with your program to see if you have more people being interested in being part of the program, or if you're still on a deficit, which is like you still need people. Uh, Application process, when you think about it, is kind of like a way to put limitations on the flow. And what I mean by that is there's a lot of people who might be interested in your ambassador program or the program or initiative that you're doing, but unfortunately, not all the companies, or you don't have the ability to accept everyone showing interest. So you need to make sure, based on your program goals, that will benefit the most from being part of it. At the same time, is a little bit like, depending on the type of project that you're running. I know some other programs is like, how will accepting certain people will sort of my KPIs. Um, but definitely like think about it in a way you get to a point where you don't have the capacity to accept everyone, so you need to start kind of like limiting the flow of people so that you're able to continue having a great program without running into red numbers, or stopping having like a good experience for people within that program. And I think the third evolution, or something that we've been researching a lot lately, working, I think like after application is evolving into like the orbit model, which I know a few folks here in like DevRel related roles are very familiar with, which is, in our case, what we're considering is like how the application process is no longer kind of like the best way to select candidates. So instead, we want to work in a way that a lot of interest in being part of the programs can still benefit from being a little bit more open, and offer like a lot of support for folks that want to build communities, but also offering that as a way to build trust and build merit to get into those roles. So the evolution is invitation, application, merit, and trust. And I've seen, and I've talked with a few other program managers that are moving towards like this approach instead, just because like having an application process is very expensive, and very expensive in terms of like time. And I know like Siddharth, you've been like on the application process of like, can like select applicants as well, and it's a very hard process. Like it's a very hard process, and it's very complex on its nature. So I would say picking the right people is important. That being said, unfortunately, it's going to be unavoidable that you will pick like people that might not be the best fit for the program at the same time. I think that there's two ways that we have learned that people will stop being very active on developer programs. The first one is voluntarily, like they joined your program, they just noticed that it was not their thing, and they decide to like, you are the Discord server number 20 out of 25, so any notification will like be forgotten. And the other thing is that there's also involuntarily ways in which people become like less active to programs. What I mean by that is sometimes something happens in their life and they need to dedicate their time into something else. Something that was not predictable happened and they decide to take some time off. So definitely like retention has like these, at least like these two different approaches, and we can talk more about like what I call the user states of or any program after all. But um, definitely like those are the things in terms of like making sure you bring the right people. Now, talking about like who are the right people for their program depends a lot on the values and the mission of your program. So in the case of like campus experts, one of the biggest misconceptions that people have is that we want people who actively promote Git and GitHub. And the reality is that though like we extremely appreciate it and we love when people like talk about like Git, the program goals is not so much about it, but but it's much more about how can who we want to reach is like people intended and building awesome communities or want to build these communities. And I think those are kind of like some of the overview of like who might be a good um, a good member of your program and all of that jazz.
I think first of all, too many points. I think yeah, and I was just able to grasp and understand a couple of them, and I genuinely understand where that's coming from. uh, Campus Expert program have been a huge example in this case, like understanding the right audience. Just a minute.
You can put elevator music in the meantime.
Living alone is kind of it can be a problem many a times because there's unexpected knocks on the door.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But so sorry for that.
The,
But yeah, I was just saying about the audience in general. I personally have experienced that a lot, and while building the ambassador program at Storyblok as well. Of course, for us it was kind of very new. When I joined, we already had a program, uh, but later on, like we decided to upgrade it because there were a lot of improvisation that needed, and we did. But at the same time, it was for us it was just a beginner thing. We were just getting started with the program of the Storyblok ambassadors, and we didn't had it very much famous. I would say not many people knew about it, and we never had that end goal of making it very much noisy out there. We just wanted to target on the right audience. That was our first thing which we thought about. And yes, as you mentioned about the invitation, we started with the same. We already had people using Storyblok, advocating and evangelizing about it within their small group of people within their organization, and our audience is like completely open. Like we do not have any barrier on age or branch or technology. It's just like even if they are part of Storyblok in some or the other way, if they are genuinely interested to advocate about headless CMS in general, I think that's a great start for them to jump in. So most of our first ambassadors are through invitations. We have met them at events we go or conferences we go to, uh, our GitHub organization where they are contributing. So I think that's where our first ambassadors came from, and it was all invitation based. Even now we run like quarterly cohorts. We have like 25 days uh, frame
Mhm.
of the applications, and the rest of the month we have the wait list on our website. So if you are genuinely interested, you can join the wait list, and then we reach out to them accordingly. So that's how we do. But of course, we are understanding more of it, understanding, and we have a very small batch of ambassadors as of now that we are onboarding every year on
Yeah,
an yearly basis. So we are improvising on the process as well and learning about who can be the right target audience. And I think we have come a long way in the past year around the program. But I also agree a lot on the second point which you mentioned about many a times people do apply without understanding what the program is all about. Just because they want to
mhm.
apply, they do apply, and later on they realize, okay, this is what it is, and because it was not of their interest, they become inactive and stuff like that happens, and ultimately it becomes less engaging from their end. Maybe uh, no communication, or many times not proper feedbacks, and yeah, things like that. But
Yeah.
that thing definitely can be solved with the invitation based approach.
I think like in this is something that I recommend everyone. I think a lot of program managers have this frustration, and if you think about think about, I think by far Campus Expert program is one of the programs that invest the most on this. This is the primarily reason
Mm.
why we don't have like a massive program. We limit the size of the program a lot, not only because like sense of, oh, we should have like 10,000 students to prove our value to the business, but rather is like how can we reach out to like X amount, like a short amount of people every certain amount of time, and make sure that we are able to support them. The way like I I think like biggest mistakes that I see with program management managers that with program managers is that size is kind of like the measure of success. And I think like if you're a student developer, like if you're a student organizer of events, like the same thing happens with events where you're like, yes, my hackathon is we organize the biggest hackathon of the world and we have like 3,000 people, right? And you have like 3,000 people, but the 3,000 have like an awful experience during the event. uh, for a little bit of that is kind of like the way that program is like trying to scale it a little bit more kind of like holistically, in a sense of we want to make sure that we have like access to everyone for resources and that people are not fighting to get like benefits from the program, or that we become very kind of like divided in that sense. This also presents like a major frequently our program is very small and we're not able to accept everyone, just because of like the team capacity. The team at GitHub Education is very small. We have people working on it right now, so definitely like our capacity is very limited as well. But um, we try our best to support as many folks as possible, and sometimes we outside of the things that we normally would do.
Yeah, I think I've been a biggest part of this support that I've been given by GitHub. I think so. I can definitely vouch on how how much of the education team thinks of the students and community leaders in general, and how they are adding a lot of value to their journey while they are learning and experimenting on different things.
Mhm.
Also, I remember you mentioned about the KPIs while you were talking about how would you uh, understand who is the right audience, right?
Yeah.
And also while building the program. So I wanted to understand that what what are those common metrics or KPIs that a program manager should focus on while they're building the
Mm,
program, and how does the result of those KPIs or metrics help them run the program eventually?
yeah, it's super complex because we
Yes.
have we have two very different things, and this is part of the conversations that I've been kind of like first hand information of things that we're thinking about. The first one is we 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 have been thinking a lot about this concept of community health or program health, and it comes from this thought of like, how do I know my program is going in the right direction? How do I know that I am achieving both business goals and I'm achieving the goals that people join the goals that people will have when they join your program is when you have Storyblok ambassadors or any other type of ambassador program, people join because there's something they want to have. Like joining these programs is because they have an interest of engaging more with the staff of the company. They want to learn and grow skills. They want to connect. So I love that is kind of like when we think of community health is how are we achieving kind of like all of these minor points all together.
Mhm.
And with campus experts there's like two different things. The one thing is program pulse, which is just like when you take like your heart rate and see like is like the heart too fast or the heart or what's going on there, or if it's like okay. A lot of like the way that we see pulse is in multiple ways. One of them is out of like all the people that we have within the program, are they being like active, are they engaged with the program, how do we have like those activities. And especially one of the most difficult parts of measuring pulse is defining what an activity is. Programs define activity as organizing an event or
Mhm.
organizing, I don't know, a conference. For example, an activity could also be like, are they creating content about the program? Are they doing this about our product? So each program needs to have their own definition. Active member is, how do you measure those activities? On the other side, we have defined a thing called community well-being, which comes from a lot
Hmm.
of research about kind of like what our programs are doing, and well, not what our programs are doing, but how are people within our. And what I mean by that is that we want to make sure that people feel like they belong in these programs, and defining or creating a sense of belonging is really complex. In the first
Hmm.
sense, like, and what we ended up doing is going back to kind of like the mission of the program and some of the values that we have. So think about it in this way: when you join the program Campus Experts, the first thing that people want to do is kind of like engage with GitHub and have like a closer connection. Simple. People want to connect with other folks, they want to learn from each other, and they want to expand their network. And we also have people that want to become, I don't know, experts on GitHub or experts with their communities. So in some sort of way, when you're defining community well-being, you're defining the different ways or the different activities that people do within your program,
Hmm.
and then in a more subjective way out to them and being like, hey, when you're talking about like the program, do you feel that your opinion counts? And we ask for your opinion. Do you think that your opinion really can change the direction of stuff? When you talk with other campus experts, do you feel valued by others as well? So
Hmm.
it is kind of like a very rough conversation. And when I talk about it with other program managers, it puts them on a spot because community well-being is manager. So if there's a very low value when you ask someone, hey, is your opinion, do you think your opinion is valued in the program? And someone tells you like, I don't think so. I think yes. Like the program managers can become very
Hmm.
defensive of like, well, but you've done this and you haven't done that or whatever. And I think a lot of that is like learning how to take like this feedback and understanding where kind of like the member of your program is coming from. um, no program is perfect, and
Hmm.
as a program managers we see a lot of stuff that our members would not see, or the people that are members of this program. So I think happens with events, right? Like you see that a microphone, then you have someone improvising a cappella talking without like a microphone. And for the audience, it's like, oh,
Hmm.
interesting, no microphone. But for you, it's like, how is it possible that we don't have a microphone? We should have overseen these and all that jazz, right? So uh, I think the programs that are working really well are those that care about like their program, but also the program. And I believe those are kind of like some things to.
Got it. I think here itself, like when it comes to these things, I personally would like to add three more points. Few things like we personally focus on is at first the developer enablement. Like when any
Mhm.
ambassador joins us, it's also kind of our responsibilities to make sure that they are aware of the Storyblok, though they have been working with it or they have contributed in the past. But from our end, we provide some resources which they would need to understand more about it, ask us questions, and just understand where we are coming from and what is the updated things they need to keep in mind also while they are communicating. For us, the second very important thing here is the developer education, which is while they are being part of the ambassador program, uh, it's kind of both the ways that they come into us, they seek for support, and at the same time, we educate them with all the upcoming updates we have about Storyblok, about all our SDKs. While they're contributing, maybe if they are asking questions, we can give back to them. And which brings me to the other point, which is developer support, because many times it happens that they are not ready for everything, right? They are not ready uh, for what we have as an expectation. So at these times, it's really crucial for us to understand them and at the same time help them with the support they need. And it's like a very fine line between all these three things. when we are enabling them, when we are educating them, and we are extending the support. It's like it can be differentiated with very minute details,
Mhm.
but this is something we really want to achieve, while we also want to make sure that, of course, the activities which you mentioned. So in our case, it's like the talks they are giving, the blogs they are writing, the open source contributions they are doing, or we have, when we have our own Discord, there are our community members in general who are asking questions, so they are helping us answering those questions, helping us extend support on Discord through the program side. So I think that also adds a lot of value to us because it saves our time,
Mhm.
and at the same time, they build that community within themselves, the mindset of helping each other over there at that
Yeah.
place.
The business side, definitely like a lot of these programs, well, especially like education related programs, is the major KPI is how are you helping people to onboard and become of the community. Um,
Hmm.
think about it like in three different levels. The first one is your program driving. The second one is how
Hmm.
many of these signups are active, and the third one is how many of them are engaged. So these three levels, like getting signups, I would say is kind of like the easiest one we could say. I mean, it's complex on its own, but definitely it's kind of like the most the easiest one. Having folks is a little bit more complex, and having like an engaged member or an engaged user is like extremely hard. So three.
Hmm.
So definitely like we do see that as well with these programs. And if you think about it, especially with the student developer programs, a lot of that is how are we helping these onboarding to be like as smooth as possible, really find
Hmm.
themselves at home at GitHub.
Yeah, that's true. I think also about the point with respect to onboarding. Uh, Many times I've observed that many programs have a lot of steps inside the onboarding.
Mm,
I think it's also important to keep it quite straightforward and then add a later guide to it, so that the initial steps are quite small, but later you'll have time to onboard. I think Campus Expert program is a great example for that. Uh, I still remember when the time I got onboarded, and it was such a smooth process, and I learned a lot in the entire process because eventually we had a lot of guides to refer, and the mentorship and the training and everything else. Uh, and I personally feel that is important because, let's say, if there's someone who is just getting started by as an applicant of a program, but they are genuinely interested, at first when it's about the onboarding, they just feel there's a lot and they get overwhelmed quite easily because it's first time for them.
mhm,
So I think for a start, it should be quite straight and simple. And of course, we can always do onboarding calls and let them know about maybe things they can expect in future. Some training guides or some references, or how are the next steps gonna look like? What is their role, the benefits, the perks? How do they get support? Where to reach out? XYZ things.
mhm.
So putting that for the later part is more, I think, more beneficial, as not for us but for the program members
Yeah.
in general, because of course it's an added step for the program managers to do, but for the health of the program which you mentioned, I think this can be a good start because this is just day one of them joining your program.
Yeah, what we've learned through time is that what you're trying to optimize for when signing up and onboarding a new member is that you want them to experience the core value proposition of your either product or your program. What I mean by that is I don't want you to take like 3 months to onboard to my program to then like finally value of the program, which
Correct.
unfortunately we can't like have that right now because of how long the training is. But in our case in a specific, if you're able to reduce the amount of time that a user takes to sign up and to set up themselves in your program and experience that receive like some swag from you, or they're organizing their event and they get like, I don't know, recognized about it, if you can optimize for that
Hmm.
moment of, oh, now I see why I joined these, you're gonna be on the right track, and people are gonna end up engaging more. The longer that it takes, the most likely that people will become dormant, which means a dormant member of your program is someone that is not doing a lot, but they might still be kind of like still close to the program. Or the worst, which is churned, a churned user that completely has disengaged with your platform or your program, and converting like a churned member into like an active one is close to impossible in time to return. So moment, the thing that we've learned is that when it takes a lot of time to set up and onboard to your program, these the every day or every like week that happens, this member will more likely become a churned user, and you won't be able to recover them.
Yeah, that's true. Uh, I think, having said that, that also brings me to another side of the story, because it's always fun and always good to see developers engaging in the right way, understanding that they are doing the right activities, they are following the values of the program. But at the same time, there's also this side of the story when it goes the wrong way, or let's talk about it, uh, saying that something which shouldn't happen happens, something out of the scope, maybe not following the values. And that's where something which is very important comes in, which is the code of conduct.
Mhm.
Now, every community does have it. While we say that, a program which we run as managers also have a strict guidelines or policy around those programs, or a community in general. So how do you think one should cater the conduct, like to address issues within the program in case it happens? For example, there's a breach of code of conduct, there's a wrong way of communication, someone who has just exceeded their line of behaving with each other, or anything.
Yeah.
How do you cater
Well,
issues?
I'm gonna be very honest. This is kind of like the hardest thing for me. Like, code of conduct violations are such a delicate topic, and I believe that um, as a manager, it's kind of like a great test as well on kind of like my. There's like I think like 5 steps that we follow internally, and we have also kind of like learned to improve our way to responding to the um because there are so many like a code of conduct violation that sometimes it's really hard to really react to it. So the first thing is prep a lot. I know a few campus experts that we've visited in the past couple of months. Like, a part of that is like, how do you force a code of conduct at your event, for example? I think I'm chopping out still. Yes, no, maybe. Okay, cool. So a big part of that is prepping and doing like some case studies. So like practices of like this situation happens to it. I think that most of us were not very used to. Like, I'm very used to like code of conduct violation. Online code of conduct violations are complex, much missing context. So uh, online is a little bit more complex, but definitely something to force and react to. Um, the other part is having a clear way for folks of conduct violation, and the last part is being fast or responding in a timely manner. So a big error that, for example, I've done in the past is researching too much about like what happened, and then a week or 2 weeks this has already kind of like it happened already. So definitely like being able to respond fast is important, but also making sure that you have a full understanding of the incident and kind of like the not only about the threats that got involved into it. So, for example, the first thing that I would normally do is uh, I get a report or I see a weird activity. If this is the first time that I see this user or this member kind of going through it, and if it's not wrong, I would normally kind of have a conversation with them just to make sure that they understand. Sometimes programs, culture plays a big role. And this is kind of like a silent language within culture. What is okay for someone in India might not be the same for someone in Brazil or someone in the US. And it can be like interpreted in many different ways. So understand that if your program is a globally distributed program, culture plays a big role. The second thing is when we receive an incident, well, when we receive a report or we have like seen something that shouldn't be there, uh, depending on the severity, is whether we send just like a warning of saying, hey, this is not allowed. Please be mindful next time. This is kind of like a call. And we document, like a document with like, oh, this incident happened this day. This is what happened. And this is how we resolve it. Um, you might need to like be a little bit more direct and more clear of like why these behaviors are not being allowed. Uh, the last one is if it's like a very strong like incident or something that definitely should not be there. We would need to set up a call. Normally, I try to have like someone else from my team joining so that only like what I heard, but also like what two different people heard. We hear both like the people that reported it, if they are with it. We also hear like from the person that committed like the incident. And then we come back and we can like do a final evaluation and talk with both their actions and how we can avoid that from happening again in the future. Worst case scenario, we also have like the ability of saying this is something that we won't allow, and we remove people from the program. I think that is kind of like not fairly common, luckily enough, but it's always like really hard to say like, um, definitely the process and keeping your team aware of like how that works is a core part of your whole program, so that anyone is able to respond when they see something. The worst that you can do is not do anything about it. And lately is like also being very careful, not careful, but like when you hear something that is weird, try to investigate a little bit more. Like sometimes people will say things like, oh yeah, well, this person, it's a little bit weird sometimes, and you're like, oh well, weird is kind of like a very complex word to define someone. uh so, or if someone tells you like, oh, this person is toxic, is like, what do you mean by toxic? Like, are they violent? Are they narcissistic? Are they bad intention? Like, do you so kind of like hear those cues and by them.
Yeah, understood. I think that's the great way to take it forward. And also, when you mention about the steps, understanding the research, like understanding the scenario, or hearing the both side of the stories. Uh, yeah, I think that allows us to get more context in general and then get back to it.
Yep.
Yeah. Also, I see we are running out of time, but I'll also quickly bring up one more question from my side, and I'll try to club those questions. One is about the career growth, and one is about the continuous improvising.
Cool.
So I wanted to ask you that in all this process, while we are building the programs, working under the company goals to fulfill those KPIs and all of these things, this is happening at one place. But at the same time, we as program managers also would like to stay up to date with all the things happening in the world, right? With
Yeah.
respect to tech, with respect to the ecosystem we are in, with respect to the developer communities in general, or their mindset, what they are going through, uh, understanding what are the current needs of the developers or our target audience, and at the same time our company. How do you stay up to date as a program manager in that, and how do you what trends do you consider keeping an eye on? And while having that growth mindset within yourself, how do you also understand that it is important to improvise or continuously keep improvising the existing program you're working with as well?
Yeah,
So it's like
I
a
think like
two-sided thing.
there's two very different definitions.
Hmm.
Improvising versus experimenting is very different. Because improvising is I'll try to do something right now.
Hmm.
Experimenting is I've seen this problem. This is my hypothesis on how can we solve it. Let's try it out.
Hmm.
So improvising, it can work good. Like I'll be very honest, like you can improvise and sometimes it will work, sometimes it won't, but
Hmm.
you won't learn that much out of it.
Hmm.
When you experiment with a program, you at least have some sort of like documentation that you can say, hey, we run this thing, it worked well. Uh, or you can say like we run this thing, but at least you know that it sucked and you have like more information about it, right?
Hmm.
So improvising is like a good approach. It works sometimes, and sometimes you have to do it. But I would like better to say about experimentation rather than improvisation. Um, Also, like people notice when you're improvising. I would say student developers are very vocal when they notice you're improvising. People will call you out for being like improv, like unstructured and stuff.
Hmm.
On the other side, I think that there's two different ways. The first one is that there's a big body of literature around. Like I'm a super nerd. I read a lot of papers about it. So about like how can I get more involved? So you can Google Scholar stuff and find really interesting papers. Uh, I think the best piece of advice that I have, and this is something that I've done recently, is reaching out to other people that are in your similar in a similar industry or role as you are. And I talk with like other student developer program managers every quarter of these, like just catching up and seeing how they're doing. And
Hmm.
I think from the program manager side, we between programs we're very collaborate. We collaborate a lot with each other. So that's also a great way for you to kind of like validate trends that you're looking. So if I'm looking at something and then I talk with other program manager and they tell me the same thing, it's like, okay, we're not the only ones, or this is not a one-off. This is a trend that we're seeing. Uh, the last thing is like, yes, there needs to be like a some sort of balance between like going to conferences and all of that. I think uh, there's no way, but I would recommend if you read the Surviving Changes at Work, there's a good framework for you from Vanessa Gennarelli that is like a science-proven method of how can you build a career and how can you align that with your company goals. So in essence, it's like, hey, if you were my manager, I would be like, hey Siddharth, I love working with campus experts, but now I want to become a better manager of other people within the company. How can we align and find value out of it? And then make all the changes that might need to happen and see what's the availability for that to happen. So a lot of that is like there are frameworks out there to kind of like guide your career. I think what is really challenging sometimes is like knowing where you go next.
Hmm.
And something that I learned, and this is something that Ashwin, hopefully Ashwin is watching this, is has been told me a lot lately. Is like I need to build or share more content about all of the things that I've learned,
Hmm.
because in these like few years I've learned so much, and I think as program managers we also want to make sure that we share this valuable for like other people.
Hmm.
Everything that we shared today, I think I really hope that that was valuable for you and for people watching at home. Uh, but I think we need to be more. We need to make a more intentional effort on sharing what we have learned and that haven't worked, so that other people avoid committing the same mistakes, and we can have better programs for everyone.
True, true, definitely. And I can already say we are learning a lot. for your question. Okay? I personally am learning a lot. I can say because uh, throughout the journey, it's been like different scenarios all the time. Of course, not the same. In different cases, when it comes to interacting with developers, understanding the company goals, resonating your goals, program goals with the company goals, setting the journey of onboarding, uh, understanding where is that the gap, and how you are trying to bridge that gap between what's missing currently, and also doing everything with a community mindset, doing everything with a non-marketing or non-sales mindset is also, I think, very important. And I would say yes, of course. The point which you mentioned about understanding and sharing your points with the other program managers, understanding how to collaborate well. This adds a lot of validation as well, that you're on a right track, or maybe if you're not, you get to understand what is the right track, and you can
Yeah.
accordingly switch the paths. So yeah, great insight. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think I'm gonna for sure implement all of these things for my growth in general, and to understand how things work with different programs, and what are those different mindsets people are working on. And also, you mentioned the place where you corrected me about improvising and experimentation. I, I totally understand what you meant by that. And
Mhm.
yeah, I can't agree more of the experimentation part, because that kind of eradicates or removes the possibility of failing. You know, uh, it's just that you're trying to find a way which works or which doesn't work, right? So that's
And
a
it's
great way
okay.
to
I think
think
like
about.
everything that we
Yes, and
do,
it's okay.
like someone tests it out, and sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't. So definitely testing and experimenting is important.
Yeah, so true. Awesome. I think let's pick one question from the chat. I see one from Toki. He says, talking about neurodiversity, many of the programs are already working to support people from all backgrounds. How does the company see this as an overall in terms of business values?
You answer your own question, which is like, what are the business values? Uh, if you're city and supporting people from all backgrounds, it makes sense. If it does not, well, it's going to be a little bit more complex. But it here's the deal. And for me, this is kind of like a big important part of your career is deciding which are kind of like these pieces of which are these decisions or things that you wouldn't accept from a company, right? And personally, I wouldn't work at a company that doesn't care about like building or supporting folks from all backgrounds. Um, and if I see that happen, that is kind of like my kill switches of like maybe I need to do a job or for another company that really aligns with my values and the things that I know. I think the question is answered on its own, talking about values diversity, then it will make sense. If it doesn't, unfortunately, but that doesn't mean you need to continue working there or doing that job. It means like, probably there's a misalignment between your company values and your personal values.
Awesome. Perfect. Also, like, let's, with that, I do not see any more question, but I wanted to know some final uh, remarks from your end, maybe some advice for someone first as who are trying to be a developer program manager, or just starting with this particular career opportunity. The other could be an advice for someone who are already building programs out there. So any quick advice for them?
Um, I mean, it can be overwhelming at times, but definitely it's worth testing it out, taking the role. If you're just getting started, reach out to other people in the industry that have more experience, I guess, and most likely or most of them are willing to jump in and help. So reach out to people that are doing similar work as you. Try to build with other people as well. You're not alone in the work that you're doing, and there's a ton of people out there that are more.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Juan, for sharing that. And thanks everyone for joining in the chat. I'm sure some of people hopped in, hopped off, but don't worry, this will be recorded and uploaded soon. So you can always watch it as per your convenience and share it with people you might feel like this may interest them. But yeah, thank you so much, Wanpa, for your time. I think this was a great conversation around everything program management and programs in general. I personally am taking a lot of things home with respect to the learnings, some lessons, some important things to consider while building a program. And I'm surely gonna experiment that with the programs at Storyblok and in general, which I contribute to ideas. Thank you so much once again. Take care, everyone. See you all in the next one.